Professional wrestling is built on a lie, a punch that never lands, a fall taken on purpose, a roar from the crowd engineered weeks earlier in a meeting no fan ever saw. For nearly a century, men bled to protect that lie. Promoters guarded it like a state secret. Heroes and villains carried their war long after the show ended, living entire lives inside roles that never turned off. That lie shaped something no other form of entertainment ever matched. A collision of fiction and reality held together by pain, discipline, and absolute commitment. The greatest con ever sold, the longest-running deception the industry ever sustained, and it was called Kayfabe. But there came a night when the walls started to shake. Territories vanished, cable television swallowed the map. Hulk Hogan's glow became a national obsession. Then Steve Austin's fury rewired the culture, and The Undertaker walked through smoke and made the supernatural feel real. Every era reshaped the stage until the world reached a point where the truth behind the curtain became louder than anything happening inside the ring. But here's the part nobody wants to admit. Kayfabe didn't die naturally. It was dismantled, systematically torn apart by the very people who once swore to protect it. Because somewhere along the way, the man behind the magic discovered something more profitable than the illusion itself, exposing the tricks behind the very con. But to understand why that loss mattered, why it shook the business to its core, we have to go back. Further than the Attitude Era, further than the territories, back to the first promoters who realized a terrifying truth. We have to return to the place where the lie was born, ancient Egypt. The walls of Beni Hassan recorded hundreds of holds with a precision that survives thousands of years later. Across Greece and Rome, wrestling crowned champions. These contests were real, brutal, unpredictable. But real combat had a problem. When two evenly matched fighters locked up, nothing happened. Matches dragged. Crowds grew restless. Promoters lost money. So performers adapted. In traveling carnivals across the 19th century, wrestlers discovered control the finish, and you control the money. The first worked matches were survival, a way to turn technique into storytelling, and storytelling into money. But once outcomes were manipulated, a new risk appeared. If the audience ever learned the truth, the entire system would collapse. That's when wrestlers built the rule: protect the illusion, no matter the cost. Violence defended a fiction audiences were never supposed to question. A challenger who didn't follow the finish was punished by men who could cripple joints for real. A promoter who exposed another star might find their wrestlers assaulted or blacklisted. By the early 20th century, that fiction hardened into structure. This was the foundation, the illusion. And as the business expanded, that illusion needed protection no individual could manage alone. One day, that protection would fail in front of the entire world. But right now it will thrive. The year was the 1950s. The world emerged from World War II, craving order. Families gathered around black and white television sets, where newscasters spoke in authoritative tones, and variety shows offered clean entertainment. People didn't question what came through the screen. Conformity was comfort. Institutions were trustworthy. Middle America wanted black and white heroes and villains, because the real world had just spent decades drowning in moral ambiguity. Wrestling fit perfectly. By the late 1940s, wrestling territories stretched across North America like separate kingdoms. Each had its own promoter, its own star, its own local psychology. But the secret behind it all had never been more fragile. One exposed finish could kill an entire town's business overnight. So the answer came in 1948. Promoters formed the National Wrestling Alliance. The NWA divided the continent into strict territories and agreed on one sacred code. Kayfabe was birthed officially. They shared one world champion, a man tough enough to protect the belt in any ring, any bar, any locker room. He traveled town to town like a myth. The enforcement was absolute. Heels and babyfaces entered arenas through different doors. They dressed in separate locker rooms. They stayed in different hotels. If you were feuding, you didn't stand in the same building unless ordered. A heel caught sharing a drink with a babyface could be fined, fired, or even worse. Because the feud didn't just live on television, it lived in the streets, in diners, in parking lots, in the eyes of every fan who thought the war was real. Men like Ricky Steamboat left restaurants when heels walked in. Ric Flair crawled away from a crashed plane with a broken back so he wouldn't get caught on the same flight with Johnny Valentine. Some turned the rule into religion. The Sheik lived his character until it consumed him, never broke persona, never revealed his voice. He was stabbed by fans more than 20 times and stayed in character during every attack. Freddie Blassie absorbed real violence from crowds who threw objects, spit, used knives. He didn't flinch. Nikita Koloff changed his legal name and spoke Russian everywhere. A Michigan native transformed into a Soviet supervillain who never allowed anyone to see the man beneath. This was kayfabe at full strength. A law enforced by money, fear, loyalty. A world where the work controlled your life, and your life protected the work. Airtight, guarded, unbroken. But the world was about to change faster than the secret could adapt. Television brought wrestling into living rooms, but it also brought scrutiny. Cameras couldn't be controlled the way live crowds could. Broadcast signals crossed territory lines. The cracks were forming. Slow, quiet, inevitable. Eventually, the confession wouldn't come from a wrestler. It would come from the man who ruled them all. But before that, the 1980s arrived like a freight train made of neon and cocaine. MTV launched on August 1st, 1981. Within months, the entire cultural operating system rebooted. Music videos replaced radio, attention spans collapsed. Image became everything. Substance became optional. Reagan's America worshipped excess. Greed was good, bigger was better. Characters were cartoons, morality was marketing. The culture didn't want subtlety anymore. It wanted spectacle, and Vince McMahon Jr. understood that before anyone else. When he took control in the early 1980s, he invaded the territories. He recruited stars from others without permission. He syndicated WWF programming into markets he didn't own. He created characters larger than life, louder, brighter, more theatrical than anything the NWA could counter. When people accused Vince of destroying the old system, he didn't deny it. He wanted it gone. And in its place, he built a new world and painted it red and yellow. Hulk Hogan was a superhero who body-slammed giants, preached about vitamins and prayers, and made children believe morality could win if it just flexed hard enough. The 1980s turned wrestling into pop culture. Rock stars marched across screens, celebrities filled ringside. Mr. T stood in Hogan's corner at WrestleMania. Cyndi Lauper was walking Wendy Richter to the ring. MTV aired wrestling specials. Wrestling wasn't a regional oddity anymore. It became a mainstream entertainment. The spectacle grew, the audiences grew, the money skyrocketed. But kayfabe began to shrink. Wrestlers lived in hotels and airports, surrounded by fans holding cameras. One wrong moment caught in public could undo months of storytelling. The old protections couldn't survive under national television's spotlight. The walls were thinning, and everyone in the business could feel it. Then came the moment that couldn't be covered up. 1989, New Jersey State Senate. Vince McMahon stood before legislators and said the words no promoter before him dared speak. Wrestling was not a competitive sport. It was entertainment. He did it to avoid regulation and taxes. A business move dressed as transparency. But the effect was nuclear. A promoter admitting the work out loud shattered the last layer of plausible deniability. Newspapers printed the quote. Fans read it. Critics celebrated it. The secret didn't die that day, but it stopped being absolute. The territory system collapsed. The NWA crumbled. WWE became the monopoly. And without competition, without the old enforcers, without the territorial walls that once protected the lie, kayfabe became something new. Not a law anymore, just a courtesy. And courtesy only lasts until someone decides it doesn't matter. And one night, under the flickering lights of Madison Square Garden, 4 men were going to prove exactly that. By the end of 1980s, the world had an attitude shift. The Cold War ended, the Berlin Wall fell, the Soviet Union collapsed. Grunge replaced hair metal. Kurt Cobain's guitar drowned out Bon Jovi's Hairspray anthems. Generation X were rebels. They didn't trust institutions. They didn't believe in heroes. Cynicism was the default. Irony was armor. Authority was the enemy. The 1990s didn't want to be sold salvation. It wanted to watch everything burn. And wrestling was about to give them exactly that, but with a new attitude. The Monday Night War began quietly. WCW backed by Ted Turner's fortune and Vince's old toys. Then they went live on Monday nights, head-to-head against Raw. 2 companies pushing boundaries, stealing talent, leaking information, daring each other to cross more lines. This wasn't just another competition, it was war. WCW brought Scott Hall through the crowd with a line that felt like an invasion.
You know who I am, but you don't know why I'm here.
Fans didn't know if it was a storyline or a contract breach. That confusion became currency. The companies were weaponizing uncertainty. Reality and fiction blurred faster than the business could control. But the audience loved it, because the 1990s wanted chaos. They wanted anti-heroes. They wanted rebellion that felt real. They wanted to see the machine break down live on television. And then came a moment that has broken down the wall that was already crumbling. May 19th, 1996. Madison Square Garden, the building where kayfabe was supposed to be sacred. 4 wrestlers stood in the ring after the cameras stopped rolling. Hall and Nash were leaving for WCW the next day. Shawn Michaels was the champion. Triple H was the heel. In the story, they hated each other. Heels and babyfaces. Enemies scripted to destroy one another. But the script didn't matter at that moment. They embraced. They hugged. They said goodbye like brothers. And the crowd captured it on handheld cameras. The footage spread through newsletters, tapes, early internet forums. The curtain call proved the roles weren't sacred anymore. The business punished Triple H, but the damage was done. The audience now had proof the industry couldn't erase. Kayfabe was bleeding. But the wound wasn't fatal yet, but what came next would be. Montreal was supposed to be a routine title change. Bret Hart was leaving for WCW. The company needed the belt back. Negotiations turned hostile. Bret refused to lose in his own country. Vince said he would honor that. Behind the curtain, plans were made. Plans that the Hitman never agreed to. November 9th, 1997. Survivor Series. Shawn Michaels locked Bret Hart in his own sharpshooter. Before Bret could react, before the planned finish could happen, Vince McMahon gave the signal. The bell rang. The match was over. Bret had lost a title he hadn't agreed to lose, on live television. And the city rioted. Fans saw betrayal that wasn't scripted. Wrestlers saw trust dissolve. Promoters saw power shift live under the lights. And it also gave birth to a monster that is soon going to shift the tides of wrestling itself. After that night, the illusion wasn't iron. It wasn't sacred. It wasn't protected by fear or loyalty. It was fragile. And everyone knew it. The Monday Night War pushed wrestling into places it had never gone before. WWF responded with anti-heroes instead of babyfaces, authority figures instead of invisible bookers, and the biggest villain that wrestling has ever seen till that, a man who wasn't a wrestler at all, the Boss. Mr. McMahon wasn't a character. He was the personification of everything that generation hated the most, authority. He was the man who controlled every storyline, every belt, every star who rose or fell. Fans hated him because the hatred was earned. They watched him betray Bret Hart in Montreal. They knew the power was real. Stone Cold Steve Austin became the perfect counterweight.
This is a figure of speech right here. How do you like it?
Every punch felt like justice. Every stunner felt like revenge. When Austin brought the fight to his boss, every blue-collar man saw his own reflection in him. The line between story and real resentment disappeared. This was the first time wrestling openly admitted the battlefield behind the curtain. A storyline built on office politics, a feud built on authority, and fans loved it. The Attitude Era was no longer just wrestling. It was shock television. WWE pushed boundaries because shock was currency. Blood, profanity, sexuality, violence that felt real because it hurt real. The FCC complained, parents complained, sponsors threatened to pull out, but the ratings soared. WCW folded, ECW collapsed under its own brilliance, and WWE reached heights that it never touched before. But the more the business revealed, the harder it became to close the curtain again. The internet arrived like a spotlight the industry couldn't dodge. Dial-up modems connected strangers in chat rooms. Forums exploded. Newsletters spread. Leaked scripts circulated. Fans traded rumors like currency. Tape collectors spread footage from Japan, Mexico, WWE. Angles, botches, shoots, betrayals, everything the company once kept hidden. Suddenly, everyone spoke the language meant only for the locker room. Burials, pushes, heat, marks, smart fans. Terms that once belonged to wrestlers now belong to fans dissecting every booking choice. The attitude has died down. Competition has vanished. WWE became the monopoly again. Austin was gone. Rock went to Hollywood. Vince McMahon was standing at the ruins of a war that he has already won, searching for the shoulder who can carry the burden. And he found his answer in a man with ruthless aggression. Everything was sailing once again. Until a tragedy struck that shook the core of this business.
Locate 3 bodies inside of the home here. Those bodies were Mr. Benoit himself, his wife Nancy, and their son Daniel.
June 2007. The news broke like an earthquake. WWE had just aired a tribute show before anyone knew what happened. When the truth came out, the backlash was instant. Congress threatened investigations. Sponsors fled. The media tore into WWE. Steroids, painkillers, brain damage, a culture of excess that had finally produced a body count. Wrestling couldn't be uncensored anymore. It couldn't be edgy. It couldn't glorify chaos. It had to be safe. It had to be PG. Suddenly blood drained. Chair shots to the headband. Tongue censored. Profanity scrubbed. Sexuality sanitized. The product softened overnight. But in middle of all that, something else was happening too. Social media arrived to finish off the job. YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. Wrestlers weren't just characters anymore. They were real people with real life, real opinions, Real image behind the curtain that was wide open for the audience to see through social media. The fourth wall dissolved. Heels posted gym selfies. Baby faces filmed vlogs. Storyline enemies appeared in the same Instagram stories. The distance kayfabe required no longer existed. The secret was dying. But the business kept moving. Until one night when a man sat cross-legged on the stage, took the mic, and detonated the truth the entire world whispered, but never dared scream on live television. The 2010s didn't arrive quietly. Confession became currency. Reality television taught audiences that authenticity was entertainment. The Real Housewives aired their divorces live. Keeping Up with the Kardashians turned family dysfunction into prime time, and everyone learned the same lesson. The messier the truth, the better the ratings. Audiences didn't want polished anymore. They wanted raw. They wanted to see the strings. They wanted to watch people break character and admit the performance was killing them. Transparency wasn't a flaw, it was the feature. The culture had shifted, and wrestling was about to catch up. The year was 2011. WWE was struggling. Ratings sagged, creative felt stale. John Cena stood at the top, but half the crowd booed him every night. The product felt manufactured, sanitized, lifeless. Fans whispered frustrations on message boards. Wrestlers bit their tongues backstage. Everyone knew the formula was broken. Everyone knew the trick didn't work anymore. But one man was done staying quiet.
Do I have everybody's attention now?
June 27th, 2011. Raw, Chicago. CM Punk sat on the stage, cross-legged, mic in hand, and dropped the pipe bomb. It wasn't just another promo, it was a confession. Wrestling admitting its own lie through a man who'd finally had enough. He tore into the company. He took names: Triple H, John Cena, Vince McMahon. He aired the frustrations fans already whispered about online. He talked about the politics, the favoritism, the corporate control strangling creativity. And the biggest twist? WWE let it happen. The corporation greenlit the collapse because admitting the reality was better business than protecting an illusion that no longer worked. The forbidden became the content. The truth became storyline. Real resentment became a segment the world couldn't stop talking about. From that night forward, the business couldn't pretend anymore. The curtain had been pulled back, but it was also monetized. WWE learned something that night, something the old guard would have called heresy. The truth sells better than the lie. The 2010s brought the shift. WWE launched the WWE Network. Wrestlers started YouTube channels.
So much since starting my own YouTube channel. I mean, who knew that there was so much fresh, innovative, non-pornographic material online? It's crazy. Hey, what are we doing here again?
Dude.
Instagram feeds showed locker room moments. Twitter feuds bled into storylines. Podcasts revealed behind-the-scenes politics. And fans didn't turn away, they leaned in. Documentaries became primetime programming. Behind-the-scenes specials showed production meetings. Wrestlers broke character mid-promo to acknowledge the script. The fourth wall wasn't a boundary anymore, it was content.
Oops, I'm breaking the fourth wall.
Reality television had trained audiences to enjoy watching manipulation happen in real time. Social media had trained them to participate in narratives they knew were constructed. Wrestling adapted. The secret that once held the business together became the product itself. So WWE decided to sell it harder than it ever had. In 2024, WWE made it official with WWE Unreal. A televised look at the writers, the creative meetings, the story pitches, the real debates behind every angle fans once believed grew organically. The old world would have buried a show like that. The new world streamed it in HD. But here's the thing. WWE didn't create that show because fans demanded transparency. They created it because transparency became profitable. When WWE merged with UFC under the TKO banner in 2023, wrestling stopped being run by people who loved it. It started being managed by executives who saw it as content. IP to monetize, brand equity to leverage across platforms. And that's when the soul started draining out. The ring used to be sacred, now it's ad space. Prime bottles sit dead center on the canvas where blood used to fall. Championship matches are sponsored by energy drinks. Clash of Clans decides who gets a spot on the WrestleMania card, and the shows that once felt like holy ground aren't even rooted in tradition anymore. WrestleMania and the Royal Rumble are being sold to the highest bidder. Las Vegas one year, Saudi Arabia the next. Traded like stadium commodities instead of milestones built through storytelling. WrestleMania isn't the climax of a year's struggle anymore. It's another product launch with pyro. Ticket prices soared. Front row seats at WrestleMania 41 in Las Vegas climbed above $5,000. VIP packages hit six figures.
Lower bowl, C135. Not floor at all.
Our seats were like what, 30,000?
Yeah. It was our first Mania. I'm like, you know what? Go big or go home. I know.
The same fans who carried WWE through empty arenas were now priced out of the building. House shows, the training ground where young talent learned their craft, were slashed from the calendar. Dozens of events canceled because profit margins didn't justify the cost. Seth Rollins warned that without those reps, the next generation wouldn't be ready. The decision makers weren't listening. Mass layoffs arrived without warning. Logan Paul leapfrogged into championship contention because of his YouTube subscriber count. Travis Scott walked down the ramp at WrestleMania 41. He had zero connection to the company. But he trended on TikTok, and that's what mattered. The storytelling got replaced by quarterly earnings calls and engagement metrics. TKO didn't kill Kayfabe, but they buried what was left of it. Because when the people running the show don't understand why the lie mattered, when they treat wrestling like widgets or quarterly targets, the soul drains out. What's left is spectacle without stakes. A billion-dollar empire built on the corpse of something that used to make people believe. But wrestling didn't die. It adapted, because the lie never carried the business. The investment did. The modern product doesn't pretend the old rules exist. It shows the writers. It shows the producers. WWE documents its own machinery. Wrestlers speak in their real voices online. Fans argue push patterns like analysts. Everyone knows the trick, yet arenas still shake. A perfectly timed turn still sends a crowd into chaos. The secret changed shape. Fans know the outcome is predetermined, but they want to understand why it was chosen. They know feuds begin in meetings, but they judge the emotion on whether it feels earned. They know characters are crafted, but they look for cracks that reveal something real underneath. Look at Cody Rhodes. The entire narrative around finishing his story worked because fans knew the real history. They knew he left WWE. They knew he co-founded AEW. They knew he came back with something to prove. They knew his father never held the WWE Championship. They knew the politics behind Roman Reigns' push. They knew Triple H was booking the match. And that knowledge didn't kill the moment. It amplified it. When Cody won at WrestleMania 40, the crowd erupted because they understood the weight of the journey. The real emotion behind the scripted victory. The corporate decision to finally give him the belt. The meta-narrative colliding with the traditional story. That's the new currency. Audience investment in the machinery itself. The illusion is no longer whether the fight is real. The illusion is whether the emotion behind it feels authentic within a system everyone knows is manufactured. Wrestling didn't lose its magic. It just moved where the magic comes from. From the ring to the story behind the ring. From the punch to the decision to throw it. From the secret to the choice to believe anyway. The lie became the product, and somehow, impossibly, we still bought it. The ring isn't sacred anymore, but it still matters. Because wrestling was never held together by secrecy. It was held together by the men who shattered their bones and bled to keep it in place. By emotion, by belief, by the willingness to care even when you know the real truth. Kayfabe died, but the connection didn't. That connection survived Montreal. It survived the curtain call. It survived the PG era. It even survived the prime bottles on the canvas. It survived because wrestling figured out the one thing the old guard never understood. People don't need to believe the lie, they need to live it with them. Click on the screen to see who's the man who carried wrestling. And if this video hit you, hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe.